What is up, everybody? Welcome to Loot Drops. On today's episode, we're going to be talking all about Outriders. Is it the new Destiny killer, or is it just a distraction? We're going to talk about our first impressions, the core gameplay, the RPG mechanics, the story, all that and more coming up right about now. Gotta love that intro song that they put in front of every single asset they release. Gotta run, gotta get out of here. Duggan, you actually went to an event, so let's start with you.
Whoa.
What do you actually think about this game? I love being hyperbolic with the whole Destiny killer thing. I'm obviously being a little
Totally
facetious.
is. I
Destiny's
mean, if
gone.
CJ Gibson is watching,
Obliterated.
Bungie employee, Bungie had a good run, but
You tried.
no King rules forever. Yeah, it's totally Destiny adjacent. It is not competing with Destiny in any way, shape, or form. It's more analogous to something like Remnant from the Ashes or Borderlands. Cooperative, wacky, no PvP, crazy PvE balance. I just had a blast. I mean, I think that whenever folks like us consider getting into a game, we want to know the longevity. We want to know how seriously kind of the developers are taking it. And I found that the less seriously they're taking it in terms of online security and dedicated servers and things like that, and just kind of give you the game and let you experience it the way you want to experience it, the more fun it ends up being at launch anyway. That's my experience.
I brought up your gameplay, Duggan. So which class are you utilizing in this gameplay? And was it your favorite? Is that why you opened this footage with this character?
Yeah, this is the Trickster. Trickster's all about time-space manipulation. You can see that my commentary is going to be a little bit behind there, but I'm basically teleporting around. You have three active abilities at once. It's a cover-based cooperative shooter RPG, and you can change those three abilities. They're not, there's more than three abilities per class, and they can be augmented by your progression, talent tree, as well as the loot and things of that nature. The Trickster is all about teleporting, time-space manipulation. He has kind of the Diablo 3 wizard time slow bubble, which I use right about here, at least from what I'm seeing anyway. And it slows not only enemies, but also projectiles. So the sense was right off the get-go, you were extremely OP, at least for dealing with trash. And that's a really, really good feeling to have. When you pick up a new gun, it can totally just, destroy and one-shot enemies. And that makes me excited from a PvE standpoint.
So my initial reaction to this, and seeing that there are three character classes, one which uses magical abilities, one which utilizes speed, and one which is like a big tanky character, that seems like an archetype that has worked in a lot of other games that I've seen before. But here's the thing. With Destiny, I sort of feel like you end up feeling very samey in terms of I guess the weapon gameplay portion of the game versus the power portion. Would you say that is also going to happen in Outriders, or is each character very distinct?
I think from the get-go, the characters are, at least the two that I enjoyed, the Devastator, the kind of like tanky Titan one. That one didn't necessarily do it for me in the way that the other two did. The Trickster felt incredibly OP, but in a really fun, thematic way, where, again, it's all about blinking around and slowing people and teleporting, and you're all over the battlefield, and it's very easy to get in and out of a fight and kind of close the distance. The Pyromancer, on the other hand, was kind of a more of the tactical shooter class, where you have like an oh crap button that's a big CC, a big stun, but the primary ability for the Pyromancer is you're shooting this kind of fireball that hits somebody, and if you kill them while they're marked, it not only heals you, but it also, that enemy turns into a living bomb, and they explode and kill the enemies around them. So that one incentivized ranged a little bit more, but I think, on the scale between World of Warcraft tank healer DPS archetype rigidity and Destiny, I think it's way closer to Destiny, where like these classes may just be doing the same thing, but in kind of a thematically and mechanically different way.
Paul, it's late where you are. You're tired. I definitely understand. We want to hear from you. You didn't get to go to the event, correct?
Correct.
So you're sort of experiencing this all. It's all really fresh. You saw it all today. What is your takeaway from immediately seeing the footage?
My initial takeaway was that everything I was seeing seemed a little bit generic. the early gameplay I was watching seemed very similar to kind of the Division. That's the impression I first got from it. And it wasn't actually until Duggan's video where I saw him more playing out of cover and just kind of sprinting around, rolling around, using powers. That it looked a lot more fun when he was doing that, as opposed to some of the other gameplay I was seeing where people were just, popping over walls and stuff. And that's like not my style at all. So I am hoping that it is possible, like even in the end game, to not be like just hiding behind cover all the time, because if it turns into like Gears of the Division, that is probably going to decrease my interest more than increase it. The impression I got from Duggan's footage was it a lot of Diablo with the powers and like kind of just running around being OP. I like the fact that there's no PvP and they don't have to balance for that, which I think is a huge plus. The aesthetic of it, there's this one photo that's like a press photo where it's literally like Warlock Hunter Titan. Like he has the Warlock helmet on. So I'm wondering how he's going to, or how this game's going to differentiate itself enough in this space. It seems like it's kind of a combination of a lot of different things. And so I wonder how it's going to kind of fit into the grand scheme of things this fall when there's so much other competition. And like, Destiny's going to release a big content drop right alongside this. And, the Division's got this big expansion now, and Anthem is allegedly going to come back to life. So I guess we'll see. And like, I certainly want to play it because this is my genre, but it wasn't really until Duggan's video that I started feeling positively about what I was seeing, because just from the marketing and from some of the other gameplay, it felt a little generic and samey.
Well, Duggan was literally on fire for the last 5 minutes of this gameplay, so maybe that makes
fire
it
tornado.
exciting.
Yeah, I saw that.
Duggan, one of the things you wanted to hit on was about Outriders and what it is not. So, what are some things that are lacking in Outriders that players might not know about or viewers?
So I guess I asked the developers. I think, similar to Paul, I had a moment. Go away, alarm. I had a moment during the press event where I was like, oh, yeah, this looks pretty generic science fiction third-person shooter. And then I got my hands on it. And when I was playing as a cover-based shooter, I wasn't really enjoying it. It felt very similar to Gears, just a little bit faster, with minus some of the kind of fluidity that Gears has. Specifically, going around a corner you cannot do in this game, just by which annoyed me to no end. But once I realized that you're not really supposed to play it in cover, I had a much better time. So I asked the developers. There's some dialogue choices we can actually see right now. I'm kind of talking to a boss I'm about to kill. So you have these branching dialogue choices, and that says to me, Mass Effect, there's going to be meaningful branching dialogue options. And I asked them, is that going to be a thing? And Joshua Rubin, the lead writer, straight up said, no, that is not going to be a thing. That's not what Outriders is about. And I really appreciated that. And so then I asked them, is there going to be PvP? No, there's not going to be PvP. That way we can make the balance in PvE as crazy as possible. They were saying they were having trouble balancing the PvE experience because they're making things so powerful. So there's no way they're gonna be able to facilitate fair PvP. And I think that that's a worthy concession to allow for a better PvE experience. And then finally, they're saying it's not a game as a service, which is a big one for folks. Which is not to say that there will not be endgame content. They say there is going to be an endgame, though I've seen none of it. And they say there will be post-launch support. But I think what they're trying to get away from is the notion that this is going to be half-finished game at launch that will then be patched into a good place. They're really trying to launch feature complete. They're trying to have a campaign with 20 missions or 20 chapters, about 40 hours of gameplay, not including replays of the end game and stuff like that. So I dig that part of it.
Paul, hearing all that, no PvP, there is going to be better story potentially than what Destiny offered initially. Do you have any reactions or any thoughts about where that's going to put it on the market in comparison to other titles?
Yeah, from what I saw, it looks a lot more harder edge, kind of on purpose, than most of the games in the genre. Pretty much all the games in the genre, where they're dropping F-bombs in the dialogue, and like when you kill the boss, you drop the dude's head off. I don't know if you've gotten to that part on the stream yet, but like you can tell what they're going for, and you can tell this is like the Bulletstorm folks. So I think that tone could set it apart. Like the Division is dark, but it's still kind of limited, you're not cutting people's heads off, like kind of thing. So that could kind of make it stand out in this space where that doesn't really exist. The story, I think, I think all loot shooters to some extent have struggled with story, so it would frankly be a miracle if this was like some amazing story. So I'm not really going to go in expecting that. I mean, I think over time a game like Destiny has built itself up with its world building and stuff and the lore and whatever, but that's probably not something I'm going to be looking for right at launch, just because I think they need to nail the gameplay. And if this really takes off and if Outriders becomes the thing, then sure, like I'll dive into the lore and all that. But I don't know. I just want it. I think it needs to stand out first in terms of gameplay and loot, and then we can worry about story and tone and considerations and stuff. I did notice that the character creator can make people with beards, so that's one advantage it has over many games in the genre.
Destiny's
so,
done.
Yeah,
Finally.
Destiny's gonna have to patch that in this fall expansion. So
Yeah, I mean, just watching the gameplay looks absolutely sick. Like the fact that you can
It is.
freeze
It's real fun.
time,
the
make
time
people
stop
blow
stuff
up.
looked really good.
Yeah, the time stop stuff. I think the fire things look really good. If anything, I would actually consider this more of a competition for Borderlands because
totally.
it's like a locked time frame, or Monster Hunter even. And did they talk about how they're going to support it post launch? Like, is it going to be DLC expansions and such?
I asked that question. They didn't really say what the model was. I don't think they've committed to one, and they, they're not revealing Endgame stuff. But the biggest takeaways for me, for what I played of it, the guns felt phenomenal for a third-person shooter. I've never really played a third-person shooter and felt like the guns feel good. Even Gears of War, with the exception of the Nasher shotgun, that thing feels great. And any shotgun in this game felt very similar to that. Any bolt action or revolver thing felt really good. That was surprising. The skills were very fun to use, and
Is
then
this
the
a boss you're destroying
this
right now?
is a mini boss. This is a
Okay.
mini boss. The game throws a lot of mini bosses at you, and they are of varying quality. This one was not very impressive. He kind of just got wrecked. The fire tornado guy just had that one ability, but that was good enough to make me move around. The final boss, which we'll see in a minute. I guess the final thing that I was really impressed with was the boss mechanics. Specifically, this final boss coming up was like of the complexity of a light Destiny raid, and this was the boss of the first chapter. I love those kind of heavy telegraph, mechanically rich boss encounters with really bespoke mechanics. So that was like a big plus for me. I asked the developers, when I watched the reveal stream, so I was at another preview event today, which I can't talk about, but I was at I was watching the. Nobody cares. Nobody knows what it's for.
Thank you, DCP Live, for the raid. Appreciate
it's for
it, guys.
Warcraft 5. Seeing the stream, the reveal stream, I was really surprised the route they took, because I agree it didn't look that great in the reveal stream. I don't think they really showed off what was super fun about this game. I think they should have gone straight to gameplay, straight to like maybe some mid-game stuff, or at least towards this final boss fight. And I asked the developers, why include cover at all? Bartek Mita, the game director, was telling me that it's not a tactical shooter, it's not a cover-based tactical shooter. And I asked, why include cover at all? And they didn't really have a good answer for that question. So I don't know what happened, whether they conceptualized it, but ultimately the way that I was playing this game was very fun, which was extremely high mobility. You can duck into cover here and there, but cover is definitely not the main focus of the game.
So right now you're actually fighting one of the main bosses.
Yes.
He's bullet smudgy, but he's throwing a lot of different mechanics at you. I really like that. Also, big shout out to DCP for rating the stream tonight. Thank you guys so much. We're talking about Outriders. If you're just joining us live, and if you're listening to the VOD, sorry, I just got to say thanks to some cool people. But yeah, so is this the only boss you got to encounter? The only final boss you got to encounter during the game?
This was the only bespoke boss that had mechanics other than that there's that flame tornado guy, but he was cool. He had this lightning gun, which I didn't get to loot. I think loot was maybe disabled for this, but I have seen some of the endgame loot, and it looks pretty wild. It's very surreal. Definitely going in a different direction aesthetically. Actually, maybe pretty similar to Destiny now that I'm thinking about it. But
it could be like exotics, something
sure.
like that.
There will be legendaries, and the way the loot works, you essentially have these modifications on the weapons, and they are very, I hate to keep using this word, but I'm gonna, bespoke. They're like, they do something. It's not just like, what does this really do? I don't know. It calls down lightning, or when you kill an enemy, it explodes into a bunch of shrapnel of bone. And so that part, when you picked up an item, there was an instant level of gratification that, oh, this is going to change the way I play, even if it's just a little bit. It's not just going to be, another shotgun that is exactly the same as the old shotgun, just statistically better. So I appreciated that part of it. The weapon archetypes, they were very humble. It was one of the most humble interviews I've ever conducted, where I was like, how many weapon archetypes are there in the game? Like real mechanically different guns. And they were like, not that many. There's
4.
There's the shotgun, the assault rifle, the sniper rifle, and then subclasses, I guess they're quantifying SMGs as a subclass of a sniper assault rifle or something like that. But I think they were being a little bit too modest. I ran into some DMRs, revolvers, there's dual wield pistols, there was a full auto shotgun that was super nasty, an LMG, and different guns synergize with different skills. So one of the skills you can get as the trickster here is twisted bullets that turns the entire magazine into a more damaging variant of regular bullets. So the higher your magazine capacity, the better that skill becomes.
All right, Paul, we've seen a good offering of what this game is going to give when we get our hands on it in public. We're sort of reacting to this live in the moment. What do you think its biggest challenge is going to be when, it goes live, or even today when it goes live? What do they need to sell players on? What do they need to show them to get them really hooked or interested in Outriders? I mean, problem A, the name of the game is Outriders. It doesn't roll off the tongue for me, but maybe it'll catch on. I don't know.
Yeah, I think two things. I think it needs to figure out its marketing and just explore some way to look less generic than it is. I don't think they've really figured that out with the trailers, and they didn't really do a great job of that in the reveal stream. It shouldn't take Duggan making a video to be like the first thing that makes me interested in the game, especially since this is my genre. So hopefully they can explore that a little bit more. Show off gameplay if that's the biggest strength. Maybe show off pieces of the story if there's anything good in there. They got to find that balance, and this far out, it doesn't seem like they have. Yeah. The second thing is I think they got to deliver on this promise that they're going to launch feature complete, because that's one thing games in the genre almost never do. The last time I can really think of a game of a loot shooter that launched and was not super screwed up in some either technical way, or there was no end game or something, was maybe The Division 2. The Division 2 had a pretty okay launch, and they built in the end game right away, and then things kind of dropped off after that.
I think Borderlands 3 was also up there.
Borderlands 3 had a good amount of technical run issues, just up front though. That was kind of a janky launch on the technical side.
A day or two, right? But then they sort of smoothed it out. Is that accurate or no?
It was just on the Epic Game Store, man. That's the problem.
Co-op was the big
problem. If you're trying to play it on console, Borderlands, it was bringing up a menu took 6 seconds, and that was only patched. That was only patched a couple months ago. So if it can launch in a very solid state, and also with the next gen of consoles coming, if they can pitch this as this is a next gen shooter, this is the game you want to get when you get your PS5 or whatever, I think that could really work well for them. As opposed to say Destiny, where it's well, here's a Destiny expansion that now runs in 60 FPS on, Xbox Series X. I think it can stand out by, at least to some extent, trying to pitch itself as a new IP for a new generation.
Mm-hmm. Well, Duggan, earlier we saw one of the most important parts of any game, and that was loot. You were buying some loot. You get to loot the bosses. What should we expect, or just what did you experience? Let's start there. What did you experience in this build of Outriders?
So if you want to re-loop this gameplay, that's totally fine.
I'm going to play the ability asset really quick.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Keep it locked on IGN.com. So I think right away the first thing I got was a weapon that had bone shrapnel, and that was totally a guaranteed drop. And what that is when you kill an enemy, he explodes. And that, it was every enemy. Every enemy you kill with that gun, they explode. And they do, it's not they did 10% damage. They killed the person next to them. And so that was it felt good. I don't know how that's going to translate into, hour 30 or 40 or how you make it more challenging. There are world tiers, by the way. So kind of similar to something like The Division. You can go replay content on a higher world tier, and that's supposedly where the multiplayer cooperative play kind of shines.
Yeah, Division and Borderlands have done that recently, and it's actually kind of fun because you get increased loot. So I went back to your gameplay, Duggan, so we can see that gun you were just talking about. Yeah.
So I'm just gonna rattle off some. These are modifications. The loot is relatively simplistic, aside from the modifications. At least in my experience, there weren't like, specific stats you needed to keep track of, and I kind of appreciated that. The guns felt really good, and picking up a new gun just mechanically was interesting to see how it performed. So here's one: Shield Maiden. Shots add small amount of shield, not that exciting. Weakening bullets. Successful shots may inflict weakness on the enemy. Clip combustion reloading causes a damaging shockwave, and then we get into some like epic stuff. Um,
This is the
Storm Whip.
loot.
Yes,
Well,
yes, yes. These are
my question is there customization? So like I know these
no.
drop with these perks, but like can you craft any of this or like pick the perks? It's all random.
I ran into a crafting node, but they weren't talking about crafting.
Okay.
Nudie takes out
Okay.
like a little angular saw and starts hacking away at some mining stuff. But
Well, to me, to be totally honest, that sounds like they're being sort of cagey, probably because they don't have it solidified yet. They're trying to figure out a
yeah,
good balance.
it's the
Yeah.
nature of. I mean, this isn't
Mhm.
releasing effectively until the end of the year. Storm Whip. Shots bring down lightning on an enemy. That one. A lot of these sound really interesting. Minefield. Shots spawn grenades. The bone shrapnel wither. I didn't necessarily have like an aha moment, except for the twisted bullets into the LMG, where I was like, oh, 2 + 2 = 4. Where this would be really good with that.
There's some loot.
Yeah. But there were vendors. They say they're going to have legendaries, but so I don't know that the high-end loot was the most interesting that I've ever seen in a looter shooter, but certainly the low-end loot you get right away was an order of magnitude more interesting than most looter shooters, mostly because of these modifications.
From what you're describing, I'm a little kind of like a Destiny did it first syndrome, where it's like, oh, calls down lightning, oh, Thunderlord, oh, enemies
Yeah.
explode, oh, Sunshot. Like, it's so I'm hoping they can. I get that there's only like so many types of things you can do with weapons at a certain point, but I think that's one thing Borderlands actually does really well is really kind of creating some truly wacky guns that you just don't see anywhere else that are still powerful. So I don't know. I just hope there's some like more interesting things that aren't kind of the usual like super perks that we usually see in this genre, because like that won't really make it stand out enough. I feel.
For sure. I guess the difference is, and I would actually argue that this is pretty significant, is that the two guns you referenced were exotics, and you're either getting lucky and getting those in your initial playthrough and having a cool, unique experience for a few levels, but most likely you're getting those at endgame. And I've long had the problem with Destiny 2 that, uh, kind of like in Magic the Gathering, when a new set comes out and there are all these awesome new cards you want to try, and frankly, most of them just aren't good enough to play competitively. Um, and so that was my experience in Destiny. Was like, oh, what are people using? I haven't played in a long time. Oh, it's the same gun I was using when I left. Um, and Magic the Gathering does a really good thing where they have this limited mode, so you can build a deck on the fly and draft, and therefore you get to use the entire arsenal. Black Ops 4 did it with Blackout, where you go onto this battle royale map and the shotgun, which normally isn't something you're interested in necessarily using, is now super cool because you picked it up first thing. So in Outriders, these guns with these mods are just dropping left and right. So you're kind of, maybe it'll be a scenario where it's like, oh, this one has bone shrapnel again, cool. But at least for me in the first mission or the first hour of this game, it was, well, look at this cool new thing, and I just started playing this game. So I guess that's the difference, was the barrier to entry to get to those effects.
I guess that leads me to my next question: is if that's the case and all the cool perks are dropping on early guns, then I wonder how what would differentiate like legendaries or exotics in this game.
Oh, it's gonna be
I mean,
so sick,
they're
dude.
not talking about it yet, I guess, but
It's gonna be so sick. It launches Destiny in the background. It uninstalls Destiny when you pull the trigger of the gun.
literally kills Destiny.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like if you start at 11, where do you go from there? But I guess that's, you know, I was having this conversation playing a vertical slice. We were talking about Diablo 4, and that vertical slice was like the best demo I've ever played. But it's just a demo. It doesn't say anything about the final game. And it's so the same logic can be applied here, where I played the first mission, but effectively, and I played it more than once, but effectively the first mission was about an hour long with side quests, with cutscenes. So It made for a really good 60 minutes of playtime where all this stuff was new and exciting. The enemy variety was really cool. There were a lot of enemies dropping martyrdom, grenades, and different archetypes of enemies coming at me, and these 2 mini bosses and 1 big boss all in the first hour, and that all felt great. But will that continue to scale until later on? The devs say, yes, there's going to be non-human enemies, there's going to be gigantic enemies, but obviously I haven't experienced that, so I can't say for sure.
All right. I want to bring up, I have about 2 more points to go over. We're not going to like drag the show out to an hour unless we end up there. So we'll just naturally let the conversation flow. And I have 2 more things that I want to hit on for sure. First of all, I'm going to play this trailer asset. Because this game has no idea what the hell it is. It's like trying to show you that it's telling a story, but it has cool powers, and it has this intro hit on all of its trailers, which is super weird. So like, it just seems so jumbled together, and they haven't had a through narrative because I can't think of a through line with their marketing strategy, right? And that makes me concerned about their storytelling strategy. So, Duggan, based on the story that you played, did you feel invested in these characters? Was
no.
It well? Okay.
Wait, what? What? Oh God, I'm trying to think of a game here. Oh my God, I saw this game. This is one of the first games I saw when I got into the industry. Well, I'm gonna have to come back to it. It reminded me. No, I loved Bulletstorm's story. That was hit all the right notes for me. Oh my God, it's driving me crazy. Well, I'll think of it while someone else is talking. But anyway, the short answer is no. This was pretty generic. Thematically, here's what's going on. But again, before I do this, one of my favorite shows of all time is Farscape, and that show is garbage when you start watching it. It's the schlockiest science fiction, but you get invested in these things that the uninitiated are ridiculous. So I would probably need to invest a significant amount of time in order to be able to be like, oh, this story is great because of X, Y, and Z. But just coming in, it was very generic. It was like, all right, Earth is dead. It's gone. We destroyed Mother Earth. Now we have to venture into the cold darkness of space to try to find a new home. And you play as the Outrider, and everybody, by the way, calls you Outrider as soon as you talk to them. They go, Outrider, thank goodness you've come.
Why do they have an accent?
I don't know. It's everybody from Earth.
In
so
space,
you basically
you get an accent. All right.
Sure. When the entire Earth leaves into space, so you venture onto this planet, and your whole thing is we need to secure the landing zone for this planet because we have the rest of the fleet, which is all of humanity, Battlestar Galactica status, that needs a new home. And things don't go well. But they don't go well because of pretty generic forces that the game doesn't explain, but that's the promise. And the forces are very generically named: the Anomaly, the Broadcast, and you carry the sacred you carry the sacred signal to find the Broadcast. The idea is the Anomaly is shutting down everything electronic. So if there's a signal emanating from somewhere on the planet, it must be outside of the Anomaly. And then your character gets like KO'd or mortally wounded, and you have to go on ice for 30 minutes. Or 30 minutes, 30 years. Sorry.
This is like 85% of the Anthem plot.
Yeah,
I was gonna say.
I'm not gonna say it's not similar. Again, I'm a gameplay first guy. This game was interesting from a gameplay perspective. I never said anything about the story being.
Does this game have like any sense of humor about like any of this? Like, is like I couldn't really get a sense of the tone, or is it just super grim dark and like I don't know?
That I was playing was like the quintessential San Francisco hipster with his beard and ear piercing, and that part was great. So having him show up to these serious moments and be like. He's like very flirty too to all the characters. So that was fun. I hope that it doesn't take itself seriously. Because Paul, to your point, like this they have to understand how, at least on the surface level, not to say that it won't become a rich, fulfilling narrative experience, but on the surface level, it is like a generic pile of exposition. So yeah, I think it succeeded more from a gameplay standpoint, but then again, you know, I liked that people said fuck, I guess, to your point. That's not super interesting, but at least it was something different. It was like, that fucker. I was like, whoa. That's all I got.
Paul, do you have anything else you want to hit on?
I guess I just have a couple more questions for you. Was there a hub world? Like,
yes,
there is. Okay, so there's like a tower or something, and then
I think it's probably going to be.
You
more
mentioned you're like this isn't that open worldy, right? Like it's more linear. Which is odd for this genre, but
the devs called it hubs and spokes, and that's a really good interpretation or articulation of it, where you have this main through line and then these branching paths, kind of like a tree to do X side quest or Y side quest. And the towns I think are probably more similar to like Diablo towns, where once you do all of the various missions coming out of this one town area, you probably, because the game is about the journey to that signal. So the promise there supposedly is you're going to be getting farther away from humanity, which is splintered into a bunch of warring factions. One of them was really interesting, by the way. One of them was like very Mad Max, and I dug that part of it. But I think it's going to
It's
get
Remnant.
weirder and more surreal.
It's Remnant from the Ashes. This is immediate. It's playing out. Like, just watching it, and the more you describe it, and the more I hear about it, I'm like, this is Remnant from the Ashes. Great standalone game. People will tear through it.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Be a good loot loop. But
well, I'm very curious about the end game, because like my concern is with hearing about the world tiers. Like if the end game is literally just playing the story over on harder difficulties, like that's not gonna fly. Like it needs some sort of mechanic, like the Division. Like
I have some quotes here. Read some quotes from my
that.
interview.
Well, the Division brought in like a whole new faction, and then like Destiny's end game is like raids and stuff. But like that would be like old Borderlands style, where it's like beat the game again, and like that's all it kind of used to be is an end game. And like they had to have moved beyond that concept at this point.
I wish someone would make raids and stuff the game, because that sounds dope.
While you bring up your quotes, Duggan, it's just like I think there's a lot of games that do this really, really well, but player decline is definitely a real thing. Division 2 did it really well. Borderlands 3 definitely saw a player decline because like most of us have just like dominated Borderlands 3 at this point, so we'll sign on quickly for the DLCs. And to me, that seems like an older strategy for content. Destiny is consistent. You can sign on regularly. There's regular activities, even if they're boring or monotonous, but it does do a pretty good job in a way that I think Anthem tried to do and just sort of missed the mark on. I can't think of another game that's really, really nailed it.
It's really hard. It takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot. Creating an MMO adjacent game, a game as a service game, is a very serious resource commitment. And It's not to be taken lightly. Case in point, Anthem. Yeah. So I think that if you can get 80 or 90% of the cool factor from something that isn't online only and isn't a shared world shooter. This is not a shared world shooter, by the way. 3-player party size. That's the co-op. They haven't talked about when I said there's towns in the sense that they're vendors, not in the sense that you're going to see a bunch of players running around, at least that I know about. So here are.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, did you get your quotes? What did they say?
I did. I have
them.
Game? So this is Bartek Mita, the creative director. I said, will there be content here for folks who want to scratch that Endgame itch? I was specifically talking about Destiny raids and that kind of bespoke cooperative mechanically difficult content. He said, yes, we definitely want people to stay with the game, but what will differentiate us from the game as a service game is that we will give the end game content when we release the game. So for the price when you buy the game, you will have the content to enjoy it a lot longer if you want to stay with the game and stay in this world. That's obviously like, that is totally meaningless unless they deliver on it, right? But the fact that it's a promise, whether they can fulfill on it or not. I mean, the great thing about a conventional game like this, where you don't need to worry about the day one rush, is like, wait for the reviews, see if it delivered on the promise.
I mean, that's kind of an outdated description, if you ask me. I feel like most of these games are launching with endgame stuff now. Like the Division launched with endgame stuff in mind. Like Borderlands built in like Proving Grounds and Slaughterhouse that were there for day one, and like Destiny is like trying to put some new endgame thing into the game every 2 months. So like I don't know if that's.
Did Borderlands? I don't think Borderlands did, right?
Yeah, Borderlands had like Proving Grounds and like Slaughter stuff, and like there was stuff to do. Yeah. That was like the end game. I mean, you could say it's worse than the other ones, but like
maybe they don't have
like
raids.
Diablo didn't launch with an end game, I guess, like back in however many years ago that was. But or like Anthem screwed it up pretty badly. But I don't know. I feel like it's not really the rule that these games don't really launch with an end game. So I'm curious to see what he means by that. Whether that's like play the story again at World Tier 30, or it's like, no, we have raids and strikes and whatever. So
I think so. The first time that I played Destiny 2, the initial level up process was fun, but I definitely I mean, most even the Division 2 had like the raid a couple of weeks after, and it wasn't bad, and it
We
wasn't a
played
long
it,
wait,
right?
and it was totally fine. Yeah,
You and I played that together. Yeah.
yeah. But I guess my experience has still been. I remember when I was reviewing the Division 2 and Borderlands 3 was like, wow, you can play this from start to finish, and it's fun the whole way, and it's not you're not playing to then achieve some kind of content that isn't there. I guess that was my experience with Destiny 2. And maybe that's not the case. And I agree with your point that like it's not a revolutionary new thing. But a lot of people are saying this sounds like a game you're going to play for a month and then never play again.
Yeah.
Great. I agree with that. I think you're probably right.
And
Maybe.
I
Like
think
I don't think
it's
that's a bad
It's not a
thing.
bad thing, honestly. In this, I don't need another Destiny. I don't have room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
One of the biggest strengths are, man, just watching your gameplay, it looks really fluid, it looks exciting, and People Can Fly, the company, they do an excellent job at just nailing that aesthetic. I love how their games feel as you play them. As you're whipping around, you're kicking people in the air with the slow-mo stuff and Bulletstorm and all the mechanics just tying together in just cool ways. And I think they've really hit that note really well here with Outriders, the name I will
Outriders.
definitely remember.
Outriders.
to be fair, at the time, Destiny was like the weirdest, most generic name ever. So
There's nothing wrong with a name
Destiny.
like
I
Destiny.
know it's close.
Yeah. Anything else you want to hit on, Paul? I don't want to cut you off.
I don't know. I think it's
It's
very
fine.
hard to judge games in this genre after like a couple trailers and like an hour of game footage or like the
I
first level. Like
Yeah.
these
That's-
games are made after like 20,
Yeah.
30, 40, 50 hours. So I think
Yeah.
it's definitely interested me enough to try it. And if I play it for a month and never look back, great. If it's the new Destiny, it manages to surpass all expectations.
Mhm.
Cool. I'm not expecting that, but I'm just hoping for like Anthem, but like not terrible. Like that's like my bar that I'm hoping.
That's
gets
a
over.
pretty apt description. Like
Oh,
the maximum
perfect.
gameplay with Anthem when I first played Anthem was like, wow, this is great, and then it totally didn't live up to that. But
Yeah.
I look at I could be very entertained by this game if the loot continues to be interesting and new, the enemies continue to be interesting and new, and that's pretty much it. Like, and the skills continue to be interesting and new, and I don't need a game that I'm going to be. Trust me, I want World of Warcraft 2 as much as the next person or whatever, but I don't necessarily need that, and I can engage with this game in a way that is an order of magnitude higher than like just a single player narrative game, but significantly lower than Destiny, and I think that's okay.
All right. I'm going to
Shout
put
out to
both.
Mountain Man in the chat.
Oh, Mountain
What's
Man.
up,
Hey,
man?
dude. What's up? I'm going to put you both on the spot. We've talked about this. I kind of want to talk about Division 2 next episode. What do you guys want to cover next episode when we're back in like 2 weeks? Unless
gotta
there's
go.
another. Duggan, you don't want to do it.
It'll be out.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
No, it won't be out yet. It'll be like right before it, I think.
Oh, really?
Well,
Well-
it comes out on the 3rd, and next show would be 27th.
We can figure it out. We still got Division 2 that we haven't hit on. We still got Borderlands 3, which we haven't revisited in a while.
What are we
And-
gonna do when we run out of shared world shooters? Because it's not like
They
there's,
just,
like,
I don't
less
know.
than
They're
a
making
dozen.
more apparently. So
Yeah.
They
Well,
are.
dude, at the end of this year, we have Marvel. Well, now we have Outriders
Oh,
and,
shit.
and
Godfall,
Godfall, the PS4
Torchlight
one.
3,
that?
Yeah.
Anthem Reborn,
Anthem 2.0.
Godfall. Wow. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess you're right. There's a lot.
So
and
there's a
a
lot
lot.
coming down the road, and as we go more towards E3, we're gonna get more stuff like this random Outrider stream in the middle of the week,
I had
Anyway.
literally not even heard of this game until
right?
like recently. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad
I had no idea.
Duggan's gameplay, got you interested. So you hear
It
that?
got me
Square?
like 40% interested.
There we
so
go.
Call
that's
up
better than-
IGN, call up James Duggan if you want us
Yeah.
to talk about your game and show off good gameplay. Yeah, that's it for this episode. As always, I will be back streaming after this. James, thank you so much for joining me after work.
No
Paul,
problem.
thank you for joining us super late from
Going to
Florida. I'll be back. Everybody else, we'll see you next time. Bye.